welcome to Here We Are, Brattleboro's community talk show. I'm Wendy O'Connell, and my guest today is Fish, also known as Peter Case, and he is a media and communication guy here in Brattleboro. He's the owner of Fishhook Communications, the general manager at Great Eastern Radio, and he has a podcast called Earspoon. Peter also writes op-ed pieces for our local papers, and he worked for 25 years in local radio. Here we are with Peter, with Fish, with both of them.
Either will do. Either will do.
Hi, Peter.
How are you?
Good. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. Now I know that you've done a lot of different media, but you also started out in Queens, New York.
I did.
Yes.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
Grew up in the shadows of Shea Stadium, so which is why I'm a Yankee fan. And when I was done ticking off everybody in Queens, I moved up here to Brattleboro to start on Red Sox Nation.
Oh, how's that going?
It's going well. It's a long fight. It's a good fight. They're better fighters.
Yeah. That's good to know. Did you play baseball?
I did.
Did you?
Yeah.
Were you avid?
I was, avid at everything I do, pretty much.
Yeah.
If I take it on, I go way over the top.
So it could be Peter Avid Case.
Could be.
You could change that.
You could.
You can do a name change anytime.
I'll check the trademark.
So you did college radio. So you started in media at some point as a young person.
Yeah, college radio is, for some, is a real thing. For me, it was just like, yeah, that'd be cool to do, and would forget to show up half the time. So, yeah.
But it's still fun, and it's still a microphone.
It is a microphone, and,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with a microphone. And in college, I probably wasn't up to having that level of responsibility.
Was it music?
Yeah, blues,
Yeah.
actually.
Blues. Oh,
Yeah.
just blues.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I was going to
blues.
ask you what the big front runners were during that time, and that would nail you as to your
to my age.
To your age.
It was the early 80s, so you can do the
Ooh,
math from
ouch.
there. So, yeah.
So you went on to be a tech sales road warrior.
Yeah.
Which not everybody knows what that is, but can you give us just a real little snapshot?
I worked for a company that dealt in large part with the labeling of circuit boards, and more specifically the label itself that is adhered to the board. I was in the mid to southwest all the time: Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, New Mexico, Louisiana, those states a lot. Going on to visit what are larger than college campuses, things like Texas Instruments, if you remember them.
Oh, yeah.
Seagate Technologies, which may or may not be in business. These were among some of my customers that were.
Where were you based?
I was based right here in Vermont. The company was in Vermont at the time.
And you weren't, you hadn't started doing local radio at that point?
No.
What compelled you to do so?
When I left that job, I did a little, I started to get a taste of what was the inception of the internet. It was around. Websites were there. They cost tens of thousands of dollars to design a website, to put it on this thing that we understood it. We would get emails, but that was a very basic thing, and I started in kind of seeing the future in what the internet was, so I started to branch out into that and doing things on that technical level, which is so rudimentary now.
Right.
It's grown well above my pay grade, and it has far preceded any knowledge I'll ever have on it. But so I started with that, and was doing a little consulting, some fundraising for what was then the Morningside Emergency Shelter, which is now Groundworks Collaborative, and I did a benefit basketball game with the New York Giants and against a local team, and I implored at the time the owner of a local radio station to help me out with some publicity. They said they would, and it just made a connection, and I started to work for them, doing a little consulting on their AM station, which carried a very right-leaning lineup of Howie Carr and Bill O'Reilly and Rush Limbaugh. And I said, well, if you want to speak to this community, you have to change those things. So we did that, and I worked there from then to just recently within the last year, for about 25 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah. One of the changes that we instituted was the fact that most people who listened to classic rock were always open to listening to other types of music. Blues was a natural fit for a classic rock station. So I started the program, the Blue Cadillac, some 25 years. Well, yeah, it's probably like 23 years ago.
That ran for a while.
Oh, well, it's running now on my new group of radio stations.
Yes.
So,
Let's talk about your new group of radio stations.
September, I decided to end what had become a toxic relationship with my former employer, and kind of go out on my own, and kind of concentrate on my Fishhook Communications thing, which was branding and consulting, and and I think not even 24 hours later, a gentleman from Great Eastern Radio, which is just a group of radio stations that are owned very locally, mom and pop, but he owns a few of them, and they reached out to me. We had some meetings. They made me an offer that I couldn't refuse, to quote one of my favorite movies of all time, The Godfather. And I've been with them since November, and it's just it's instilled my faith back into the radio industry, that there are still some good people left in it.
Well, that's heartening. That's good to know. And a lot has changed in local radio and local media in general.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I know that you've had experiences with that, and I think it's a big part of this conversation too. I think with how things are changing in our local media, and I know BCTV for one is the FCC is posing a threat to the funding of public access TV all over the country.
Yeah.
And WKVT canceled Good Morning, Green Mountain Mornings.
Green Mountain Mornings.
So that was a big instigator for everybody in the community, most of the media in the community, to come together and talk about how to go forward.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you'll be pleased to know that part of the my website that I have, called theearspoon.com, I've been able to get Olga Peters on to continue to do a portion of the website, which is focused strictly on a lot of Vermont issues. We call that portion of the website Vermontitude, and she will interview
It's really good.
Yeah, so we have that. She doesn't, and Olga is just the best. So I'm fortunate to still be working together in that capacity. The internet and now just makes everything just so at home, and working remotely,
Yes.
as the saying goes. But so Olga's able to do that, upload, I post it to the website, and we're off and running. Another person who did what was then Live and Local, Steve West, and I do the main podcast for the Earspoon, entitled The Earspoon. So, I get to work with these people who, I, in some way, shape, or form, hired originally at my old employer, and they're just wonderful, smart people who are community-minded and care about the community deeply, as I do, and looking to serve that community.
Yes. And do you have any idea what your listenership is?
It varies, depending on the topic that we pick.
Can you count?
Yeah, there's the big word of the day is metrics. So everybody can look at the metrics. I literally know what town or city or IP you've pulled me in from.
Is it getting broader?
Yeah, a little bit, like a few each and every week. Launching a podcast of a political nature is, everybody's passionate about ranting. And Steve West and I are very passionate about ranting, and almost to a fault. So we will, there's a lot of competition. It's not a super niche-y market, as it were. But I think we have people who come back in, download the podcast every week, or listen to it every week. I can see that. It gets shared, and social media.
So you can track it to a certain degree. And you had, what was the name of your show? What the Hell's Up with That?
Yes.
Are you still doing that?
So yeah, that was just that was a segment I started. I was traveling, and I was probably in my first year of doing the morning show, some 20 plus years ago, and there was a guy who did a segment called View from the Couch, and it was him just sort of ranting about it. It had to do with sports. And that was his rant. And I would get up the whole time I was there and listen to this thing that played at 7:50 every morning. This whoever the jock was, his view from the couch.
Yeah.
And he was giving his opinion on something that may have happened the day before. Again, very sports oriented. I was like, wow, I could take a bit like that. And I've always said, what the hell's up with that? And I thought, let me do it. So every day I would do it at 7:50.
Every day.
Every day, some different subject.
Yep.
Sometimes it's political, sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's interested in politics to the level I'm interested. Not everybody shares my political beliefs. So I have to, if you're going to broadcast to the masses, you have to appeal to the masses. And that means sometimes you're going to tick off a certain segment while another segment is very happy with you.
That's right.
So
Well,
it's an ebb and a flow.
You're preparing, though, each one of these. There's a lot of prep work that I would imagine goes into each one.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So you're writing, you're thinking, you're listening, you're thinking, you're writing, you're broadcasting.
Well, at first, yes, I would write these whole things out and practice them dutifully. And then, but when you get into a decade of doing that, you realize that what you've developed is just chops. And you can open up the microphone, pick the topic. I could write down a couple of things that, all right, when you're ranting, make sure you cover this, this, and this is how you end it. So I could literally have 5 words on a page and blow it all into a 2-minute rant and be done.
Yeah.
So.
And cover all your bases too, right?
Mm-hmm.
In addition to this, Peter, you have a column in the Reformer.
I do. Yep. Which was born from that daily segment that I did. Somewhere along the line, I had reached out to what was then the editor of the Reformer, a gentleman named Kevin Moran, who still works for the company. Really super nice guy. And said, hey, what do you think about putting this column in the paper? And that's been there for, I don't know, every part of 15 years. So.
And you're doing that on a regular basis?
Yep, every Wednesday.
And the subjects differ?
Oh yeah, yep. No, it's those have to be written out. I can't rant those through.
Right.
But 700 words or less, and there it is.
Yeah. Between radio and podcasts and print, which one are you most comfortable in?
I would have to give the audio media a nod. I mean, I really, really enjoy writing. I really do. But I'm always comfortable around a microphone.
Yeah.
So I can just pop in and I can do just about anything. I mean, I've got my new morning show now, which just started. Every morning 6 to 10 on Cool FM.
On Cool FM. And so what number is that?
In Brattleboro, it would be 96.3. In Keene, 106.5. There's many different ways. It streams online at twinstateoldie.com. And
so this is a 3 or 4 hour stint
this is a
every morning.
4 hours.
4 hour
Yep.
stint every morning.
6 to 10.
And do you have guests on?
Yeah, we do. I just had somebody from Strolling of the Heifers on. You ever hear of that? Strolling of the Heifers?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep, we just did. We just interviewed Annie Latches, and we talked about some of the changes that are coming up for this year's stroll, and I'll look forward to having more of those conversations.
Yeah, so you try to be topical.
Yeah, of course. And first and foremost for me, doing local radio means serving the community in which they can hear you. So it's interesting. So the cool signal's a very big signal. It stretches 100 miles north of here. So I mean, it's a lot of ground to cover, but I put it out there that I wanna serve those communities. So if you need me for anything, radio is still a really good way to get it out.
Yeah, I'm wondering if it's going to be more popular, as time goes on a little bit.
That's what I'm banking on.
Yeah, literally, right?
Right. Yeah.
I think that brings up the question, which a little bit we started off with too, in terms of being a voice in the community. And I'm interested in, because I had my own feelings about doing this show as well, is what, I think it's getting a feel for what the community would like, maybe what the community needs, and to be a voice for that. And so you have, you say you've got your rants, you've got your opinions, but they're points of view, that you're bringing out there. And could you talk a little bit about what that feels like to be a voice in the community?
So it's strange because it has a higher sense of responsibility than I thought. I can remember the day that I've always said if there's something that I can do, and again, we talked briefly about me doing a fundraiser for the Morningside Shelter long before there was any radio. So I've been wanting to do things for people who are in need my whole life. Something that was instilled in me by both of my parents. That you help the people who are less fortunate than you. And you do those things just because you want to be a decent human being. And I always thought to myself, gee, if there was a way for me to serve on a grander scale, I would do it. And I was probably a year or two into doing my morning show when it hit me like, oh my God, I've got access to thousands and thousands and thousands of people each and every single morning.
Yeah.
And this radio station does. And I can leverage that to do some good. So I started to do that. And really, I feel did it well. And it felt good to be able to help. Even somebody whose home burned, being able to kind of engage that muscle to do the things that needed to do. If there's doing a fundraiser, going and supporting that, making sure the word got out so it was heavily attended, finding silent auction items for them to raffle off so they could make a little bit more money. Doing that when it spawned into things like bigger events like Load the Latches, which was an idea I brought to my former employer, where we could just raise some money and awareness for the Groundworks Collaborative. And, for my other group of radio stations, we just took the same model that I created here and created it for the Keene, New Hampshire market, because we cover the Keene, New Hampshire market.
Right. When I started the show, a little bit after the first few shows, I realized, this is being broadcast. It's like putting the seeds out there into the community. You don't know who's listening. You don't know the people. You're not seeing them eye to eye. You're not having a conversation with them, but you are bringing something of yourself, and also the things that you believe in, and yes, the responsibility, and the ability to respond too.
Yeah, and I mean, not every person who comes to you has something that's really, really worthy of time and effort. They may think it is. I can remember vividly 15 years ago being approached to somebody wanting to go to a Super Bowl game and was going to do a fundraiser, and would I support that? No. So I'm sorry, I won't. It's not. It doesn't make sense. It's going to annoy my listeners. No. I mean, if you want to send somebody who's sick to the Super Bowl game, I'll help you out. But I'm not just sending you because you want to go.
Yes. One of the things that you've been doing, one of the other things you've been doing recently is you're doing this storytelling, Fables, up in Putney.
Yes.
Which is a monthly, every second Wednesday in Putney at Next Stage.
Right.
Yes. So.
Second Wednesday every month.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
7:00 start. It's funny how it sort of came hand in hand, and there's a million of those cliches when one door closes, another one opens, and it's really good to say. And I can remember having a conversation with Steve West after we were done podcasting, and he said to me, he goes, "A year from now, you're going to look at me and say that what you just went through wasn't so bad, and why did I wait so long? Why didn't I pull the trigger myself?" And he was right. So right around when all of it really started to blow up, I went to the Next Stage Theater in Putney, Vermont to attend a Moth event. And one of my friends, Tom Bodette, was telling a story that evening, and I was catching up with him after the show, and we were talking about it, and I was trying to do some storytelling myself. And so we were chit-chatting with that, and there was Ophira Eisenberg was also there, who's somebody I've gotten to know as well. And so I was chit-chatting with her, and then I went back and was talking to Tom, and Maria Basescu was standing there. And as I was talking to Tom, and I said to Tom, I think Maria wants to talk to you. And Maria said, "No, actually, I want to talk to you. So find me before you leave." And she said, "We want to do this sort of thing on a regular basis." And I was like, "Okay." She said, "Was that something you think that you would be willing to kind of MC and curate?" Oh yeah, totally. So she gave me that wonderful gift in a really sort of a dark time for me that really just sort of lifted up. But that's kind of where we left it. I think she was just gauging interest, and She called me probably about a month later and said, yeah, we want to move forward in this. Can you meet us? So I met them. We figured out a time. And last June, we did our first one.
So you're coming up to 1 year.
We are coming up on 1 year next month. Yep.
Yeah, that's great. And they've been successful.
They've been really, really well attended, well supported. You know, we have some sponsors who help defray a lot of the costs. I mean, this thing's not a real big money maker for anybody, you know. But there's some donations, and most of it goes to you know, printing programs and doing a little advertising here and there, and supporting Next Stage, which is important. They do some wonderful work.
They do.
Put up some wonderful shows as well.
And for folks in the audience too, this is it's sort of a cabaret style. It's not in the auditorium upstairs. It's in the lower level, which is very intimate. It's a very nice space for storytelling. And you coach people too.
Yeah, to a degree. You know, I was fortunate. When we first started, I did a lot of it. I was able to really handpick some really good people. Becca Ballant was one of our first storytellers. Steve West told a storyteller. Don Kierden stole a story, and I'm missing who am I missing?
Stuart McDermott was in that mix. He's good too.
Yeah, he was. That was one that we did. He wasn't the first one to tell a story, but and that in that first one, I really got that chance to sort of really be like specific and talk to them about their stories and get them set up. And it didn't take a whole lot of coaching. They were just good storytellers.
Right.
And so that was fortunate for me. And at that first one, Cynthia Payne Meyer came. And I thought, wow, it's a lot of work. You know, she was incapacitated, and I just thought, I was thrilled that she was there, but I knew Cynthia from, you know, an endurance world of cycling and doing those kind of outdoor activities. I think I was probably the last person in Windham County that knew she was a professional storyteller. I didn't know that. And my wife approached me and said, you should get Cynthia to tell a story. And I was like, why? Why would I do that? She goes, well, you know, she's a professional storyteller. I said, I did not know that. Shortly thereafter, Maria said, hey, you know, Cynthia would like to get involved. Can we figure this out? And I was like, yeah. I mean, what, you know, maybe she was interested in doing some coaching. I was like, oh my God. So we would have the storytellers record the stories, email them to me so that I could listen to them, which helps me set the night up.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it's really very helpful. And then I would send them to Cynthia, and Cynthia would send back a paragraph.
Oh, okay, that's how it worked.
To them, basically saying, this is great. And I would focus on this and take this out and do this, and her input was always, you know, gentle and solid. Yeah, so that's since her passing, that's something I've really I had taken for granted that she was there. So now I miss it.
So we acknowledge Cynthia.
Yes.
And I noticed that in your pamphlet for the Fables that you have a picture of her and acknowledgement. Yes.
Yeah, she loved those events so much.
Yes.
And
the events miss her.
Yep, and never missed one. And in fact, the night that she passed, which was, it is what it is, but it was the night that we did one. The theme of the evening was girl power, and so she attended that one, heard 4 amazing stories from 4 very strong women about being strong women, and went home that night and within a few hours passed away.
Yes.
So,
that was a sad night.
Yeah.
You mentioned endorphins, and I know that one thing that you're involved in, you do some biking.
I do.
And you do something called mud ducks.
Wow. Now the mud ducks is a it was a completely a joke that developed into a $1 billion industry with people who don't make $1 billion. We say that because we're a registered triathlon team, and with I think 4 people that are actively involved in it to a degree. One of which doesn't swim or run, so he's just more of a cyclist. And the 3 others, we just have custom triathlon kits made and ride around on expensive bikes, and we call ourselves the Mud Ducks. That's all.
That's
it's just
great.
so that's
great.
It's just something that you do when you can't afford a red shiny Corvette.
There are worse things to do
I
when
know.
you can't afford that. We talked a bit about local media and the many changes that have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly since you've been involved these last 25 years, there have been lots and lots of changes, but I think even more so the last few years. So what's your hope, or what's your feeling about the future for local media?
You know, we live in an age right now that it's really hard with the cutbacks and people thinking that everything has to move to a digital platform. Digital is great. I'm not saying anything bad about digital, but it does cannibalize local markets. And you think that you're doing bigger and better things for your business by advertising on a digital platform, and you may or may not be. You could just be pulling something else while somebody else pulls somebody away from you. So it's really a super contentious time for a lot of newspaper, a lot of radio, kind of reporting on things on a local level. The days of going out on the street with a microphone to cover and give firsthand news are sort of gone. And especially here on a local, I mean, the Reformer and the Commons are the closest thing that we have to kind of keeping those hopes and dreams alive of having something local with feet on the ground, and covering these stories and getting firsthand accounts. Occasionally I would do it when I was in the radio, but I'm not a news guy. I'm just not. I appreciate the news. I love it when it's reported well. Things like BCTV, which are just essential to communities like ours, with the threats that they have with the MCCs, but don't worry about it. Telecom guys are in charge. You'll be fine. Not.
Yeah.
It concerns me to a degree, but the nice thing about people in media, and I've said this, you can chain them up, throw them in the basement. They will wake up in the morning, release themselves, report for the day, and report back to the basement at the end of the day. they're pretty hardy people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think it's people who want to be a voice in the community, and I think for BCTV and for the local papers and the podcasts that are springing up, and the radio stations and all of that, I think that the more that we can work together and the more that we can hear each other and trade information. I know that there are some BCTV people who have gone out in the streets with microphones and cameras and interviewed, and it's so cool.
Yep.
It's the real thing. It is, it's boots on the ground and voices on the mics.
And consistency.
And well, we would love to have more consistency, and so I think for you and I and for many other people who are involved in these local medias, we're putting out a call, for new eyes and new ears and people who'd love to get involved more. And you can always get in touch with us at BCTV. Peter's information will be at the end of the show, and we've got our newspapers and our radio stations. So, and we welcome interns as well. So. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you.
Thank you,
It's
Fish.
been fun. It's been fun.
Good.
It's been fun.
Good. As I always say, that's our aim, is to have a good time.
Yeah.
Thanks to all of you for being with us again today. We are a weekly show. We bring people like Fish on to talk about whatever is on people's minds. So join us, be part of it, and we welcome having you. See you next week.